A few months ago, my friend was moving into a new house, and while he was moving, he found a big piece of Corian that he stashed away in his garage. This was actually from one of his previous houses, and it was one of the big sink cutouts that they did in the countertop. And he always wanted to make a cutting board out of it. Now, I know a lot of you are going to probably say that Corian cutting boards can dull your knives. Well, so can glass and other ones, but he wanted a cutting board. So he gave it to me probably like 6 or 7 months ago, and it kind of moved from here to there in my shop, and the thing was kind of heavy. So I finally got around to it. I got enough projects out of the way that I could do something. Now when I first got the Corian, I didn't know how good it was going to cut, but surprisingly on the table saw, it cut just fine. You might have to go just a little bit slower, but it's almost just like cutting hardwood. It's really not that bad. I needed something round to mark the ends, so I just ended up using my little black light flashlight that I use for scorpion hunting, marked it, and that was the perfect radius. Cutting on the bandsaw was no problem, worked great. The Corian actually sanded off a lot faster than I thought, so I had to be a little careful so I didn't go too much. My first attempt at doing a blood groove or a juice groove, I tried to use a guide on my hand router, on my plunge router, and I had a hard time. On the router or the router table, it kind of goes a little bit slower, it's a little harder to control than it is when you're using wood. So I messed up more than a couple times on the first one. You see a couple places where it kind of, goes out of a straight line, or one of my edges went a little bit too far. So I had another piece, since I started off with a fairly large piece, and I took it to the router table. And it worked a lot better. I still have a couple small imperfections, but it's really not too bad. I've actually seen some other methods of doing this where you actually build a frame around it and then use like a template bit to cut the groove around it. I think that would probably work a lot better. Cutting it and using the router left quite a few marks where it wasn't nice and shiny anymore. So I really just started through about 100 grit and went up through 600 grit. And I mean, it looks nice. It almost looks nicer than it originally was. After I sanded the blood groove, I wet sanded the whole top of 600 grit. And it is super smooth now. It actually works very well. I ended up putting some of these little rubber or these the vinyl bumpers, little self-adhesive vinyl bumpers on the bottom of it. I was going to use kind of the same rubber feet that I put on my other cutting board, but this thing's only about ½ an inch thick, and the screws that came with that were a little bit longer, and I think these ones are going to work out just fine. So in the matter of maybe only a couple hours, which was mostly sanding, I have this nice Corian cutting board that probably matches my friend's house from 3 houses ago. So I think that my friend's going to be happy to get this thing back after it's been sitting in my garage for 6 months and been sitting in his garage for probably half a dozen years. If you've enjoyed this video, please comment down below, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you can catch some of my future videos.